morning. And so I guess as you know, I've doing a venture here in Oklahoma City, or Oklahoma in general, for a little bit, essentially doing some outreach to the labs here. So I'll show you on the map the places I've been, and that Cannalytics is spreading the word about our cannabis testing solutions, and I'll tell you a little bit about the data here. But before that, like, how are things going with you, Charles?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I think I have a job. I'm maybe going to start like in a week or two.
Well, please tell more.
It's working with like 3D imaging and making measurements off of 3D image scans using using machine learning.
Interesting. So, have you done much machine learning work? So there is actually a lab that Cannalytics is interested in the work Cannalytics is doing, and one of the things they're interested in is finding uses for machine learning. So, how do you go about even using it? You get the problem first, or do you have a good model in mind? And so, how do you even go about things?
Well, I mean, yeah, you need to figure out what they want to solve, and then try and find a model that will work with that. Or a lot of times you have to build your own model. And you have to do some feature engineering, and it's it's a lot of trial and error, and kind of just sort of knowing, having sort of kind of intuition as to what to try.
So the problem we have at hand is, say like a lab wanted to like maybe almost predict the chance of a sample failing as it comes in the door. So that way, you can just have an eye out, in case, and you can like, run those samples right away in case there's a failure. You can, let people know right away. So is that a reasonable use for machine learning? And if so, how would you go about even starting?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I thought about trying to do that with the Washington data. There aren't a lot of failures in there, although I would imagine in most cases there aren't a lot of failures. But so you're probably going to, the only thing you're really going to know ahead of time, right, is the producer and the strain. Right?
And so it was real interesting. So at CannaCon, there was a presentation about heavy metals. And what's interesting is if you look at the distribution of, heavy metals that have been tested, say in water, soil, even in this case, they were looking at human blood samples. It's not evenly distributed. So there's hot spots, certain places are sort of cleaner and others are dirtier than others. So I think geographic region, I mean, I've got a hunch it may play a factor, but I don't know how well it would explain.
Yeah, you could use geographic region as one of the inputs, although that would be correlated to the producer. But you might have a producer you've never seen before, so yeah, you might just want to, instead of going by the producer, you could go by where they're located, time of year. Maybe time of year like has some effect on it. So yeah, you would just try and find things that you're going to know ahead of time and try and predict, the outcome. It seems like a problem you could at least try. Now, whether you have enough data and whether that data would give you enough information to predict something is another question.
Do you think that's even the most value added use? Or, like, do you think it would even be that worthwhile? Or are you thinking, like, so for example, can you just discover gold with machine learning? Just find avenues that you hadn't thought of? Or do you really have to have a good value added idea to begin with?
You can find, I mean, you can find things that you don't know about. You could do some sort of like clustering algorithm, and I mean, that's something else. You could, yeah, you could do a clustering algorithm and see, if certain regions or producers or strains and that fall into a group that fails more. So,
And
but
then see if there's any similar characteristics.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
well,
I would be interested in working on something like that. That would be pretty cool.
well, with the Washington State data, we could technically do that, right? So we've got their geographic location and potentially the failure rates, right?
Yeah.
So, so I think we may need to add that to the list. So I could, I guess, work on getting those data points. Well, we already have several of these data points. So we've got essentially their latitude and longitude. So may just want to do count. I like to do counties, but we could get more granular if we can get as granular as we would like. And so the next step would just be to calculate, failure rates of the variable of interest that we're interested in.
Yeah.
So the main things that you could test for failing would be the microbials, and like you said, those may have a real low failure rate. And then really the only other thing in Washington State is the residual solvents, right? Because pesticides and heavy metals aren't, there's not regular testing on those compounds. So do you think like residual solvents like from processors would vary from location to location, or
It might. I mean, isn't that part of the problem? Is that some producers just heavily uh, like heavily spray their crops and others don't, and I mean, like, um, yeah, I mean, it's certainly worth investigating to see.
yeah? So the residual solvents will be like your butanes, your propanes, and the other extraction compounds. So
Yeah, I mean, it could be the type of equipment that they use to do the extraction, how
ooh,
experienced they are.
here's actually a good thought. So at Canicon, right, the they had a wide range of equipment, right? So if you're when you do processing, you can invest quite a bit in extraction equipment. So once you've done your propane or butane or your hydrocarbon extraction, you can invest a lot in an expensive extraction equipment, and then you're going to need to essentially evaporate off all the hydrocarbons. And so people have different budgets, right? So a smaller processor is going to use, less efficient equipment than, a large scale processor. So large scale processors may be more effective, they may be more effective at removing unwanted hydrocarbons from their products. And so they may have a lower failure rate. And so that would actually be worthwhile, knowing. So, if you scale, does your failure rate go down as well? Because they're, scaling for cost saving reasons. Well, economies of scale, essentially.
Right.
And so it'd be interesting to see if that applies to failure rates.
Yeah,
Or
that would be interesting to see. That would be, that's the kind of thing I've been trying to figure out. Like, what kind of predictive machine learning type things can we do with this data? And that would be an interesting thing. And I've seen there was I think it was a story on the news about um, people doing extractions, and like having small operations out of their garage and stuff. So yeah, I wonder, you know, I would imagine that the type of equipment that you use has some effect on it, and hopefully, if you're spending more money on equipment, you're getting a higher quality product out of it. But
well, exactly, and that's what they're saying is, you're getting a more pure product, and so one would hypothesize that you would have a a lower failure rate. But we can potentially quantify that. And so way I think you can potentially measure the processors. So there may just be a one size fits all processing license in Washington State. But what if you proxy the size or the amount that they spend on their equipment by their sales? So you would just look at, say, total sales by processor, say by month, and then look at the failure rate for that processor for that month and see if those are correlated. So you'd run a regression of failure rate on total sales. So one would think that the larger processors have larger sales, thus they can spend more on their equipment, and we would hypothesize have a lower failure rate.
yeah, okay.
So I think we just discovered a research project. That may be a little large to embark on today, but I think that's another one that we can chalk onto the chalkboard and potentially look at as early as next week.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just go ahead. I guess we can go ahead and break into a little bit of work that I've done here recently, and I can present some of that if you would like.
Sure.
So, nope, June 2nd. So, long story short, so Kinlytics has put together a map here where we're trying to map the cannabis testing licenses in the United States, potentially the world as well, but for now, the United States. And so, just to get some on the map over here, just been, introducing Cannalytics to various laboratories here in Oklahoma City, and then popped over to Tulsa, to a handful of laboratories here. And I'm actually in Grove right now, and I'll stop by Genesis testing just to say hey. So, just to get a look at the Oklahoma industry here. And so Oklahoma does have interesting data. So stories.opengov.com, Oklahoma State. And they just have, snapshots of their revenue. However, and they also have also have a list of their licensed businesses. So you can see the licensed growers, processors, dispensaries, laboratories in the state. So here we have PDFs. And so we would like this data, in a more readily consumable format. And there may be others as well. So analytics, we're trying to make data accessible. So today we're going to make this data accessible. So just to kind of show you some of the work I've done here. So just using a handful of tools, we'll basically go and we'll download the PDFs. So, so we'll basically download each of these. And then we'll want to parse them just to get them, into a, consumable format. And then I just, do a little cleaning of the names, just all lowercase and snake case. So we can, I've committed this code to the Cannabis Data Science repository. So you can follow along and, really read into the script here when you really have time to delve into that. And then if you just want to, grab the data, then we have it already created and uploaded for you. All right, okay, so let's look at the data. As most states are moving in this direction, just towards a little bit of privacy for the cultivators and processors, you're geographic location is at the county level. So you don't really get much granular than that, and so that's to respect the privacy of these businesses. However, for a lot of our analysis, the county level or even the zip code is perfectly sufficient for our analyses. And just to show you the scale of these, just in Oklahoma, there are some, well, there's north of 11,000 licensees. So, and this would include your transporters, your library, your laboratories, your waste disposals companies. So it's first glance it's striving, or thriving. So we really want to try to quantify this a bit more because all we really know is just the number of licensees, right? But these people may have just licensed. They may not be operational. So we want to get a bit more, a bit better look at the industry. So the next data point we can get is, whoops. Essentially the revenue. So you can download this as a CSV. So here I've downloaded that. And once again, we need to, to parse this appropriately. So one thing that I began to note, so you'll see this here in a second. So let's go ahead and, read in the revenue. And once again, just parse the data just to get it into a format that we can use. All right. And so, does anything jump out at you, Charles?
It's linear and increasing
Yes.
almost perfectly.
Do you have much faith in that data?
No.
So that was something that's a little, concerning to me. Is it's one would say like how linear, and so that's actually what I actually did next was so here I tossed on just a time index B. So that way, we just have a counter. Then we can just calculate just a quick trend. So this is basically just running a regression of total revenue on time. Where t equals 0. T. Right. then we'll just plot the trend with total revenue. And so, we essentially have, just a perfectly, linear line here. So it just kind of, now I'm just trying to think about like how to explain this. So honestly, the first things that came to mind is maybe the software developer just put in placeholders, but that just doesn't seem likely. Then I'm thinking, yes, maybe that's just what they're accounting for, or maybe they're only taxing a certain amount per month. It's hard to explain. So do you have any thoughts on this, Charles, or what are we looking at here?
No, I mean it looks suspicious, but
Maybe that's just like how they're accounting for it. Like they're just like the licensees just submitted the year total and they're just like accruing it per month, but it doesn't really explain like how they have up through May. Or am I interpreting this data wrong?
um, are maybe more and more people getting into the system legally? Or have they loosened their requirements on medical marijuana? Or
Oh, let's just calculate because it looks like there's about what is this, 7 million difference? So let's see, because basically I was, wanting to start doing, statistics on this data, but like I said, it just doesn't look, well, I don't know, it just needs some explanation. Like I'm just not certain what's going on. So it's just,
so it looked like, I mean, like every month it was like, just when you were hovering over it, there was like 11, 12, 13% growth. And so every month it grew, by roughly the same amount.
unless this is just like, or are we looking at something weird? Like, are we just looking at like the aggregate or something? And maybe like the difference is what's going on. Because you see, it's not like, but this is strange. Well, here, why don't we write a quick for loop? Okay. So what's going wrong here?
Hmm.
Thank you for bearing with me. The tortoise always beats the hare. Okay, so it's not the same every month. Um, hmm, uh, this is interesting. So let's just try to capture these values and analyze the difference here for a second. So let's just look at this difference. See, like that's what you would sort of expect, like a revenue plot would look a bit more. Doesn't that look a bit more reasonable?
Yeah.
So do you think this is just year to date? Is that what we're looking at here?
Maybe. Um, when did medical marijuana become legal in Oklahoma?
It looks like sales began essentially in July of 2020. I
Uh,
want to say that January of 2020, but it looks like we just have data from July.
I mean, this just could be like a ramping up as people get into the system and start
Actually,
moving from like, the black market to the legal market.
interesting. Look at this. So I think that may just be. Though I think this is not necessarily what we want. Okay, so here, let's go back to. And keep in mind, this is the tax, not the revenue. Um, so, okay, so Charles, this is now what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is just a running.
Oh yeah, right. Because there's actual, then there's total. Oh, but the actual and the total are always the same.
Yeah, so I think this is just a, cumulative, the cumulative graph. So August includes July, September includes July and August. And so then if you look at the difference, then then this is essentially your change in excise tax per month. So this would be the taxable this would represent the taxable revenue. if I'm interpreting this correctly. And so it may be worth reaching out to the OMMA, this body, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, just to clarify that that is what we are looking at here. So we can actually perhaps adjust our code real quick to account for this. And pandas just do a simple diff. Okay, excellent. So pandas has just a built-in diff that we can use. So it does not, we can't explain this initial 5 million because well, let's see what the mean is over here. So our mean is 77 million. Does that sound right? Awesome. Where was our initial dashboard? Let's look at some of the statistics that they've produced. So they're saying that in March, we're not certain the year, that almost 1 million came from the gross receipts. See, it's really hard. See, that's why this data really needs some exploration because doesn't that seem like their industry is like staggeringly large? Or
Yeah.
what's the oh, hold on. That's because I was calculating the total revenue. I was applying the tax rate, but we need to do the change first. Okay, so let's try this. So okay, so let's see. Okay, so that does look about right. So it looks like they're getting about 5 million in excise tax per month. Right? That sounds a bit more reasonable, right?
Yes.
Consider if this was let's see when this was published. So this was published in 2019. So in 2019, they were getting about 1 million, a little less than 1 million with their excise tax. So yeah, so it appears that, by July of 2020, when they have this data published, it looks like the first data point is about 5 million per month. And then it looks like they're increasing about 5 million each month. So this must be the cumulative.
Right.
Okay, and so then we can actually add on this first data point here, just do a little hot fix here. Just to go ahead and get the first data point back. Let's see, how can we just add essentially just want to get that first data point back, because we never want to throw away. Okay, so I don't think I'm using this correctly. Okay, so I didn't use that correctly. Do you know off the top of your head how to assign a value?
Don't you want to use like iLock or lock?
Potentially. So basically, we want to fill in this first revenue observation.
Right. I mean, it's something like, um,
Can we,
yeah,
can we do that?
I think so.
Open is may give us a suggestion.
You're just setting it on a copy, which is not.
So I don't think that's the best practice.
Somewhere in here, you just need to say copy.
Nonetheless, for now,
But
we are.
you're safe. You're not gonna do anything.
It will serve our purpose well. Let's let's address this later. So we'll just look at it from August onwards, just so we can, expedite things. And we'll come back and address this. Okay, so does this look a bit more reasonable for revenue? Well, it does not.
We're still at 77 million.
Well, actually, does that sound right? So that they're getting about 77 million, and the excise tax is 7%. Yeah, so that's about right. So it does. I mean, just I mean, in my opinion, it's a staggering amount of sales, right? You're you're doing 77 million in sales in August. Then it dips down towards December, which is an interesting observation that it looks like it's inversely related with like Christmas shopping. And then you just see this, nice, or you see quite a steady rise to what's this, 90 million or already in May. So so you have 89 million in May. That's they're on. So let's see. So let's calculate how much revenue they've raised this year in 2021. So we can say, okay, we want revenue data. Let's just do this quickly. So maybe we can just say P dot. We do B. Let's see, 2021. Right, so that worked. So there, so if we just want to look at revenue so far for 2021, fairly steady increase. And so let's go ahead and so in the first 5 months, Oklahoma's, grossed almost 400 million in cannabis sales. So I think, Colorado is about a billion or perhaps even 2 billion, dollar industry. And so, here Oklahoma, in 5 months has done 400 million.
Wow.
So let's just say, so, one could expect if they kind of keep on this trajectory that would it be surprising to see Oklahoma gross 1 billion in cannabis sales this year? So that's So that's 70 million in excise tax, if I'm doing the math correctly. So, yeah, so that sounds about right. So they're doing, a little more than 5 million a month. But yeah, so they're getting about $70 million. And I mean, that's not chump change. So,
No, I mean, well, this is why everybody's interested in this industry, right? It's gonna, it generates a lot of money.
well, that's just money left on the table. If you're not doing it. And in fact, you, you know, not only are are people getting benefits, from the the medicinal consumption, right? So Oklahoma, this is actually all medicinal sales. So these are all people who are using cannabis for medicinal purposes. So not only are they getting that benefit, but yes, the state's also, you know, the 70 million. That's like that could easily be like 35 schools or however they want to spend that money. But that's hopefully going to have quite a positive impact.
Yeah.
So I think I think we've made a little sense of the data here, and I think if we have time in the last little bit here, the interesting measure is we could potentially look at the average revenue per retailer or grower, so that way we can kind of get a measure of how large these businesses are. So let's just do a you know a, like a dispensary count essentially. So we're gonna have to do this quite quickly, Charles, but that's why we're just crunching numbers. That's what we're all about here. So let's quickly find out what they're called and then isolate them. And then count them. There's about 2,000. And then keep in mind that these were probably fluctuated throughout the year, but we can use a proxy here. So we can say, well, not really a proxy, but an estimate. So we can just say estimated revenue per dispensary per month. So that would just be our revenue divided by the number of dispensaries. And let's see if this makes sense at all. First of all, you need to define everything. And then this is yet another positive impact on the community, right? Because you've got your patients getting their medicinal benefit, you have the government getting their revenue, which they can distribute to the public through public goods like education roads. You do see a lot of road construction in Oklahoma, which it's a good thing to see, right? They're fixing up their roads big time. And then you look at the dispensaries, and look at this. They're grossing, let's look at the mean here. So the average is a little north of 34,000 a month for for a dispensary. Um, so people who are opening up a cannabis dispensary, which it requires a little bit of overhead, but not that much more than opening up a restaurant, probably less. And they can easily gross $500,000 a year. That's a good sized business. So, and there's 2,000 of them, right? So I mean, I'm sure they're not all making the same revenue, but right. So overnight, Oklahoma turned on the switch, and now you have 2,200 businesses making an average of $400,000 a year. That's phenomenal. That's good for them. That's good for their employees, the people that work for them. Yeah, so you have a large multiplier effect from this, right? Because when a business opens, right, they need an accountant. They need to make signage. They need to do advertising. There's a huge ripple effect throughout the economy where these companies are now, utilizing other companies. So I think I'll leave it there for today, but it's just phenomenal to see.
Yeah.
Any comments, Charles?
No, it's great. I mean, they have to hire people who spend money around the community, and so it might be interesting to look, like sales by county or sales by zip code.
So Oklahoma does have a public records request. So similar to Washington State, you can make public records requests to OMMA, and so it would be worthwhile asking. So they just have their dashboard, which just has the totals. So I think it is worthwhile to ask what else, what other data is public. So can we get the sales by county, so to speak? Even if we have to do the data wrangling and crunching ourselves, if they can at least get us in the right direction. So you're right, because I think further analysis is needed, because as we've seen in Washington State, the distribution of licensees is it varies, right? So you've got your concentrated retailers along the Puget Sound, and then you've got the cultivation heavy Eastern Washington. Yeah. We've got several fruitful avenues to pursue for next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, so we've got failure rates to look at. We've got geographic location to look at. So, and there was one at the beginning that we'll have to review in the recording. So, I think it's been a productive day.
Yeah, that's good. It was a good good meeting.
So we were going to look at the processors to see if processor size affects failure rates. So those are the takeaways for today. Is economies of scale are worth looking at. The geographic location is worth looking at, and as always, the number one rule is look at the data.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Charles. I think we'll leave it there for today and pick up next week. Hopefully we can get things cleared away as to the timing, and I look forward to crunching some numbers with you next week.
Okay, great. Have
Awesome.
fun in Oklahoma.
I will.
Get some
And-
good barbecue. They have really good barbecue out there.
Ooh, I'll get some. And keep, well, keep the secret. But, definitely feel free to share anything that you can about what you learn about machine learning, because that's something, we would love to learn more about as well.
Okay.
Awesome, Charles. Well, once again, have a fantastic day, and we'll be in touch.
Okay. All right. See ya.
Bye now.